Well, it's another summer day here in Durham, North Carolina. Thought I would definitely check in with y'all. We're looking forward to having another exciting edition and, of course, some great conversations and all of that. So it should be another fun day in that regard. So definitely looking forward to talking to my guests when they get here very shortly and everything. And definitely we'll be talking about wellness and a number of other things along that line. So definitely looking forward to having a conversation. In the meantime, we're going to share a lot of other things that are going on in the world as well. And of course, we might bring up some of the other things that are happening in our community. You do know that this is the week of the Black Business Olympics. And of course, we're looking forward to participating in that. And that is always a fun and amazing event. And all kinds of great speakers will be there again, once again, of course. And we're looking forward to great conversations from folks like Sharon Campbell, definitely Maxine Burrow McCoy, and definitely looking forward to a number of other great speakers as well. I believe Fran Harris will be back with us, and some other newer speakers will be joining as well. And of course, we've got some of the Mod Squad, some of the ones that have been with us before. That's the moderators, and of course, some new ones as well. So definitely looking forward to some great conversations with all of those folks doing this great event that takes place now pretty much quarterly. So definitely looking forward to some amazing things being learned in that regards. And I know a lot of other folks are looking forward to that as well. People are already planning their schedule to be involved in that for the next week or so. So definitely, well, the next week, because that's right, it'll start, and it has started, and it'll run until the Sunday, the 29th. So definitely, that will be a great thing that a lot of folks are going to be looking forward to. By the way, we know that a lot of people are trying to be economical in these hard times, and one of the ways they're doing that is dollar stores. Yes, and of course, everything that has a boom might have a dark side as well. So that's one of the articles that I've been reading about was more Americans are seeking out bargain bin prices for everyday needs as inflation rises and job losses disproportionately impact low-income earners. While this trend has fueled tremendous growth for dollar stores, the Washington Post reports it has also turbocharged income inequality. Dollar stores tend to concentrate in low income neighborhoods, with most locations lacking fresh food and other offerings that these areas need. So, like I said, there can be a good part of dollar stores, but also a bad part as well. And that's actually what one of these articles is putting into perspective and all of that. So the explosive rise of dollar stores is yet another example of how the pandemic has reshaped the economy and widened the gulf between the wealthiest and poorest Americas. It's definitely something that folks are paying attention to. As a matter of fact, the one of the reporters for the Washington Post said it's a striking disparity in this country. There is now dollar store and there is Whole Foods land, said Stacy Mitchell, co-director of the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. And if you live in Whole Foods land, it's very hard for people to understand just how desperate circumstances are for the rest of the country. And we do know that, you're trying to find affordable food and all of that. And sometimes it can be definitely something that can be devastating and all of that. So definitely that's one of the things that we're seeing. And another person that works at Trimble said another example of the growing income disparities in our country. When people lack empathy, it's hard for them to understand and accept this reality. More often relying only on what they experience over the reality of what others experience. People often chant entitlements and abuse of government programs like unemployment, SNAP, etc., are often ignoring the reality on the ground and not denying the benefits of building a stable society. So that's one of the things that has been put out there and that a lot of folks are thinking about as well. So that's just some of the things that folks might have on their mind, and maybe it's on your mind as well. Don't forget, we're always looking forward to having conversations with not just our guests, but also the folks that are watching. So if you got any thoughts about some of the things that I'm saying or that I'm reporting, definitely I would love to hear from you as well. And we're also hearing that some people are considering that maybe college isn't for them. They're saying that the case for college is weakening. So the promise that a college degree could set you on a path to expanded opportunity, no matter your background, has begun to fall apart. The boost in wealth you can expect from a bachelor's has declined sharply over the past decades, according to analysis from the Federal Reserve of St. Louis. What went wrong? Two recently published books, Adam Harris, The State Must Provide, and Josh Mitchell's The Debt Trap, trace these problems to separate but related stories. Higher education legacy of racial discrimination and the formation of a student loan system that has saddled millions with stifling debt. And I can definitely relate to that as well. Both Harris and Mitchell offer several proposed solutions, from leveling the funding playing field for historically black colleges and universities to reconstruction the student loan system. So definitely that'll be interesting what folks have to say about that and whether that is something that they would be willing to even look at. So the promise that a college degree could open financial and professional doors has fallen flat for many Americans in recent years. Two recently published books from The Atlantic's Adam Harris and, like I said, the Wall Street Journal's Josh Mitchell have definitely helped us look into this disparity. And of course, different folks are coming up with different thoughts around what they're saying and all of that. As a matter of fact, Michael M., a retired grants manager, said there is a model that provides a great return on investment, but doesn't give much ink. And that's actually a model that I know is prided right here in North Carolina. The community college system does an excellent job of preparing people through certificate programs. Some of these certificate programs provide access to jobs with pretty high incomes. And I know that definitely we've had folks here on this network that have talked about community colleges. And I believe Mr. Rao might be trying to get some of them to come back in the near future. So workforce training grants through the Department of Labor and state workforce commissions increasingly integrate internship programs through the various training programs. Community colleges are doing exactly what they were designed to do, but for some reason are left out of the higher education model discussion. So definitely that is an interesting thought that folks are having about that particular story and its impact on us and all of that. So definitely some great things happening there. I see that my guest is here, so I'm going to bring her in, and we're going to have a great conversation and all of that. So if y'all will hold on, I'm going to bring Afro Life Wealth into the conversation and see what they've got going on as well. So Afria, I'm hoping that you're with me and that you're able to join in the conversation. Definitely looking forward to having people learn more about what you're doing, what's happening in your life and all of that. I was just giving a little bit of a rundown of some of the news that was going on in society and all of that, but we definitely met through Potted, which is a website that has in the past helped me find a great guests. And I know that I'm looking forward to having our conversation, and part of our conversation is around health, because I do know that you and your company are very much about that health journey, and to know that that is an important journey for all of us to have, and we need to be having these conversations on a regular basis. So I guess I'll just dive in and ask you how you're doing, how things are going in your part of the world, and then maybe we could share a little bit about the reason that health and healthy living is so important to you. So how are you doing on this particular lovely day?
Greetings, Mark. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you. Yes, I look very much forward to having this chance to delve into what I do and express my role and in health and my journey along the way. It's been up and down. It's been forever growing, still growing. How am I doing? I'm doing really good. It's not probably as sunny as where you are. It's quite overcast, but we always give thanks, and praises. And I'm very excited about today. It's just 10 minutes past 5 p.m. And yeah, it's evening time. So
Sounds
yeah.
great. I know a lot of times people were starting to pay more attention to their health because of the pandemic. Of course, we're still in the middle of the pandemic. So I was wondering, were you seeing more of an increase in your business? Because I know that definitely a lot of folks that probably should have been paying attention to these things all along, they started becoming more concerned because, of course, they wanted to find ways to build up their immune systems even before the vaccine became available and definitely widely available in the West and everything. But I was just wondering, is this something that has gotten people more interested in living a healthy life and everything? And I definitely want to get into some of your story as well. But I know that even among my friends and peers, they're starting to, think about doing everything from smoothies to being more better about their diet and even better about their exercise regimen. So I think that the pandemic may have got people to rethink their kind of health motives and their health thoughts. But I was wondering if you were seeing that same thing in your parts of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely more interest, particularly because of the times and what we're going through. People are wanting to gain more knowledge, investigate, and really take charge of their own health. And that's where we're at now, which is really good, to empower the individual, which is paramount, really. We all have to take responsibility of how we look after ourselves, what we're doing in our daily lives, our daily habitual routines, the way we eat, exercise, movement, quality of life. It's all very much effective, and it's very much involved in terms of health and well-being. And yes, I've definitely noticed great interest to the point where I'm doing more workshops, which is really fun. It's a serious matter, most definitely, particularly as I mentioned, and as you've mentioned, the pandemic. But I would say it's very interesting because now, as we know, we have a lot of information at just at the matter of just tapping our buttons on our keyboards. We can find out whatever it is we want to know about certain conditions, health matters. There is a wealth of information out there. So, there's really no excuse. But you do get the other side. You get one extreme and then you get the other extreme where people still are carrying on doing what they're doing, and they're not really that much concerned about their health, and they're still carrying on as normal. I have somebody that I know who's had cancer, like, this is his third time.
Wow.
And he's beaten it. And even to this day, he's in remission. But it does beg the question about his lifestyle. What is he doing? When he does suffer this condition, he completely changes his lifestyle. He changes his eating. He's more in tune with himself. He's more very vigilant on what he's doing in terms of his health. But then once he's in remission and he's given the okay, slides right back down into old habits, old ways. And it's like, some people, him included, are playing Russian roulette with their lives. It's quite incredible how some people do things. And if we, statistics, research tells us that a lot of our health dispositions are in fact due to lifestyle and diet and the way we eat. Fundamentally, that is one of the reasons as to why people do contract certain diseases, because of our eating. And things are looking quite bleak because numbers are rising in terms of obesity, right, which is really a pandemic in itself. But we are giving a lot of attention to the big C, and I'm not talking of, we have two big C's now. We have the COVID and we have cancer, right, but there's a lot of other life-threatening health conditions, health issues that now are not given that much of attention. They're being oversighted, overlooked, which really I think is quite detrimental in itself, because we need to really look at all health matters. But I do like the fact that individuals certain individuals are taking health matters into their own hands. And that's some of the things that I do in my business, but I'll talk about that later on
Oh
during
yeah.
our conversation.
Oh yeah, definitely. One of the things I was curious about, and you actually kind of alluded to it, we talk a lot about even with the pandemic about certain industries, and definitely here in the United States, the pharmaceutical industry is a big one. But here in the United States, the fast food industry is also a big one, and I'm probably just as guilty of anybody else of going way too much to those fast food restaurants. And probably have, well, no, probably I do have a few extra pounds on me and everything from eating too much at those fast food restaurants, kind of like what you were talking about with your friend who is probably also a client and everything. But what do you do to suggest that people do better, maybe like making smoothies or making some of the more natural foods, and avoiding the trip to McDonald's or Wendy's or whatever the various fast food restaurants are? Because I would argue that they are probably maybe as dangerous a lobby as the lobbies with the pharmaceutical industry and everything, because they definitely are not going to be happy when they lose business as well, even though some of them do try to serve what they might consider a healthy option. But a lot of times those are very scant, and sometimes the prices aren't that great either. So what do you say when people are telling you that they're in that rush? Because I know that that's usually the reason that I put out there for ordering, and sometimes it's even ordering from like those fast food kind of like delivery services, be that DoorDash or Grubhub, which is what we have in the United States. I know there are other ones that are over there in like London and some of the African nations and things of that nature. So when people are telling you that they're too busy and they're not eating healthy, so what is your answer to them?
Yeah, well, there's always room for improvement, myself included, Mark. I'm not perfect. We all have our certain weaknesses, but we have to understand, particularly in the West, that we're living in an obesogenic society where things have been put in place purposely for us to be tempted, to be enticed, to make the choices that we do in terms of when we are food purchasing. I mean, when you go into your food stores, what do you normally see? You see rows and rows and rows of color
Right. Right.
of all different types of foods, all different shapes and different labels. And a lot of these foods are processed foods.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they have been manufactured in itself, it really is quite addictive. Even just before you even consume these foods, just looking at the labels, the kinds of offers, buy one, get one free, I'm sure you have the same where you are, and we are being inundated with all this, I won't say conspiracy, but, we are being inundated, enticed to buy these sorts of foods. And then when we get home and we eat them, these foods in themselves are laced with certain amount of chemicals. And these chemicals are very, very addictive. All these additives, preservatives, they are really, really addictive. I mean, sugar, that should be a class A drug, I tell you, because it's in everything. Why is it in savory food? Why is it in like foods that are supposed to be sour and and not sweet? But yet you'll find them in all kinds of different foods what you wouldn't even expect. And when you see the quantity that they of sugar, it's really quite insidious. The way they even describe it and the amount, it's a lot. It's a lot. And so it's not our fault, really, but we have to be really, really vigilant and read labels. That would be my first tip. When you're going, I know you may think, oh gosh, I've got to read labels now, but really and truly, really try to read them and try to understand, because even though the information is on display, they still try to confuse us when they actually have these labels. and you'll see like sugar when it's in its list will be maybe at the top. That means that it contains a lot of sugar, but the percentage may be small. So you really have to be like an investigator. They'll say, oh, this is natural, but not all natural things are healthy. So you have to weigh up granola bars. They are the amount of sugar and salt in a granola bar. So also another tip I would say is to try and I know we are busy, we have busy lifestyles, people have several jobs, they're trying to put a food on the table and so forth and so forth. But try and carve out some time to cook, prepare your own meals, really and truly, because what's going into your dish.
Right.
You can control the amount of salt that you put in your curries or whatever it is that you're making. You can control the amount of sugar that you're putting in a cake. So what I would really suggest to people is if you watch TV, try and cut down on the TV that you're watching, cut down on the social media, and just carve out a little bit of time to prepare your meal and to really prepare your meals, not just for yourself, but maybe for your family, and get them in on board. Get the kids to cut up some carrots. If you're married, get your spouse to make it a family thing, make it a fun thing. Make going to shopping, make it fun. Ask your children, where are you going to get your vitamin A from? What food produce are you going to get your vitamin D or E or your minerals from? Try and educate your children through doing everyday life things that we do. And at the end of the day, it's about yourself. How do you consider yourself? Do you really love yourself? Are you really worth the effort? And I think everybody can say that they are. I mean, I know I am. I want to make this effort to improve my health. And really and truly, you don't have to do so much. Little or less is more. A little goes a long way. Making a few changes to your lifestyle, to your eating habits will is paramount. It's doing these minimal things can just be so much in the long run. You don't have to cut out meat, or if you're eating surplus amounts of meat, you don't have to suddenly become vegan. No, what I would suggest is perhaps reduce the amount of meat that you're eating. Try not to eat red meat so much. Try to go for the white meat. Try to cut off the skin. Try to grill your food. Try to eat more raw foods. Make a beautiful salad. Make your plate colorful so you're getting all the nutrients that you need in one sitting. And try not to, for me, really, I don't advocate snacking because it just makes you want to eat and eat and eat. So try and cut out those snacks. I think really and truly, as a nation, as a globe, we eat far, far, far too much. We eat far too much, really, and that is one of the problems. You can go without food for weeks.
Right.
You're not going to suddenly perish if you don't have breakfast. I mean, that's my take. I know when I eat breakfast, and they say breakfast is the most, I'm going out on the limb here, but this is what I've known for myself. They say that breakfast is the most important meal. It may be, but when I eat breakfast, I know in myself, I will graze the whole day. I will eat. I don't know what it is, but if I don't have breakfast and I don't eat until at least after 12 o'clock in the afternoon, I have more energy. I don't eat as much, and I'm still sustained. So that's my experiment. And I know like a certain, friends and clients of mine have attested to the same thing. So if you miss out a meal, you're not going to perish. I remember when I was at school, we used to pay for our school dinners on a daily basis, and there were some children who forgot to bring their dinner money. And I remember my headmistress, she would say, right, okay, you're not going to have your dinner. And she was really like a tough nut. And she would exclude those children. Yes, they didn't get their lunch. But they'd come back to school the next day. Nothing happened to them. So if you do miss a meal, it's not the end of the world. You don't have to suddenly think, oh my gosh, I've missed a meal. I've got to make up for it. Because one thing with the human anatomy, digestion takes up a lot of energy. It really, really does. It pulls in all the reserves, all the energy. So if you're eating continuously, think what that's doing to that digestive system. It's pulling so much energy to try and sustain that mechanism within the body, rather than using the body to construct it, to repair, for growth. No, it's bringing all the reserves for digestion. And then if you're not eliminating as well, all that is being digested is remaining in the body. Right. And it's just putrefying, and you'll have your waste is remain within you. So no wonder people are becoming bigger, because waste in itself, some people carry around 20 pounds of waste because they're not eliminating. So in that respect, you're carrying unnecessary weight, as well as the fatty substances, and as well as all the necessary, all the nasty things that we were not getting rid of. So can you imagine what's going on in your body? So just little things like that, just little things to think about. It's not anything out there. It's not anything really laborious, really hard that you have to think to yourself, oh my gosh, I've got to do this. This is another task. No, just little things that you can do for yourself, just cutting out. Don't buy white sugar. Try and buy, maybe brown. I wouldn't even say brown, but just try and buy maybe fruit sugars. Try to cut out sugar, but do it gradually, not in one go, because it is like going cold turkey. You're going to get those withdrawal symptoms, and then it may exacerbate what you're trying to do and make things even worse. So do it gradually, but be consistent. If you know you're going to cut out sugar, cut out a little bit. Maybe instead of having, I don't know what the average intake in terms of spoons, maybe if you're having 3 spoons of sugar or whatever, cut it down to perhaps 2. If you're having 2, cut it down to perhaps 1, cut it down to half. And you do it like that in stages. If you're eating lots of chips, I know in America you call it chips, we call it crisps. If you're eating like bags of crisps a day, cut them down. Cut them down to maybe a couple. Maybe cut them down to 1 a day. Maybe cut them down to 1 a week. That's how we do. We do it in gradual stages. And then you'll have more longevity. And it will be more sustainable, and you won't hit that crash. And then all of a sudden, you start craving, and then you're worse than what you were previously to the change. So those are the sort of things, that I would say. Get your friends and family, because one of the things that can happen, you have made a decision to say, right, I'm going to do this. I'm full on. I'm really going to do this. But the people around you are unhelpful. They're eating all the foods that you are trying to abstain from, and you're constantly being tempted. You might not have that strong willpower. So get friends and let them know that, look, this is what I'm doing. Please help me. Don't be eating this kind of food in my face. If you're going to eat this, let me know. Or if it's in your own household, let's try and, get the whole family in on it. Let's try and cut down and give them reasons as to why you want to cut down. Show them do some research, show them the stats as to what, people are getting fatter, people are getting bigger, and that's not good for your health. And tell them the reasons why, because a lot of people, if you just start laying the law and say, right, we're doing this, that, and the other, they're going to wonder, what the hell? Why are we suddenly changing? So give them the facts, give them the reasons, educate them, find out. There's lots of information out there as to why we should be looking after ourselves. We don't have to wait for a pandemic. Now the pandemic's here. This is even more of a reason to be checking yourself and really be focusing on your health, because your health is your real wealth. It really is. If you don't have your health, you can't enjoy your wealth. You can't enjoy getting a car. I mean, you can sit in it, but how long is that going to last for? But your health is for the rest of your life. And if you want to prolong your life, you've got to do something about it. You've really got to do something. Make those little necessary changes.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of things that I had actually heard about recently and everything. One of them was actually, it might have been on the Clubhouse, or maybe it was a YouTube channel that I was watching and everything. But they were talking about how a lot of times those colors are not accidental. So those colors are placed in everything from the commercials to the displays in order to entice you to buy. So sometimes they were talking about that subliminal message that we get. And I think one of the examples they used was actually not a food product, but actually like a service product. Because I think they were talking about the colors within the gecko and everything, meaning the gecko insurance people and everything. But definitely, I think we could say the same thing about the way that they display food at the grocery store. And I know that you mentioned that earlier. So it does seem like there's a lot of times they are giving us these subliminal messages in order to get us to buy these bad foods. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about the subliminal messages that we get and how that plays a part in what's going on as well. Because I remember I think it was Marshall McLuhan had a book that talked about subliminal messaging when he wrote that book many decades ago and everything.
It is certainly subliminal. Most definitely, it's like a syndicate, because we have the psychologists that they come up with all these ways to make us almost like mesmerize us with the food and the way they're placed. It's a whole operation. They spend millions just researching and finding the best sort of colors to really strike and hit you as you even enter the supermarkets, the food stores. I know in the UK, and it's really annoying, but it hit me like a sledgehammer. When I go into a store and I'm looking for a particular item, one week it will be somewhere, and you'll know that it's there. And then a couple of weeks later, you'll go to that spot and you'll think, oh, they've changed it. They've changed it. They've changed it. And you get really frustrated. What do? You go on a search. There's nobody to ask, oh, where is this item, please? Because they don't have the staff. And I think that's something in itself, that's on purpose. But you go on a search, and what do? You see these offers, buy one, get one free. And then you start, you walk in intending to buy that one item, but you come out with a whole heap of different items. And I bet most of those are processed, all these kind of, because I don't think that food is cheap, because it isn't cheap, particularly in the long run, when you think about your health. But you come out with all these discounted offers, which you hadn't intended to buy. You intended to buy one thing, but because you couldn't find that one thing, and you went all around the houses looking for it, and on your way looking for it, you saw all these discounts and started filling up your basket with all different, and that's on purpose. And these are the sort of gimmicks and procedures that they do, and they spend millions. The colors, the striking colors that hit you, the reds, the yellows. If you look at certain labels, it will just literally dance at you, screaming at you, please buy me, please buy me. And that's what people do. They start buying. And then packaging as well, things, the way items have been packaged, we're getting more robust, more more bigger, or very vibrant and very cumbersome types of packaging now, which also is displayed on the aisles. And it really is a procedure to continuously make us buy. None of the health foods are really on a Disney. Well, they are in certain respects, but not to the point of these processed foods that they really want us to take home and go home with and come back and buy them again and continuously keep buying these products because, like I said before, they are laced with additives, things that make us so addicted to them. Sometimes now in stores, they have like bakeries. They have a bakery within the store, and you can smell the bread being baked. And what do? You go and buy the bread. And that's the way they grab us. McDonald's, when you walk in, you see all the lighting. Now everything's digitized, and you can just go and order your food on a screen. It makes it so much more practical. It makes it so much more easier. Fast food. But it's a fast way to end up in a very unhealthy, maybe fatalistic way when we really, really think about it. So
I don't know if you had a chance to hear the story before that I was doing mention of. It was one of the stories that was earlier and everything, but they were talking about how a lot of times in our poor communities, they are going to the dollar stores, and I would even argue the convenience stores as well, where some of our richer neighbors may be going to like Whole Foods, or as a friend of mine likes to call it, whole paychecks, because of its price points and everything. So I was just wondering, because sometimes if you go to those stores, the dollar store, they may not have the same kind of selection, and they definitely don't have the same kind of healthy selection. And the convenience store, while they may have bananas and apples, they are not priced all that well and everything. So a lot of times I know when I've gone up there, they're sitting there for weeks on end because they're much more expensive at a convenience store than they would be at, say, a grocery store or even some of the other stores. But, therefore people are not necessarily buying them because they're kind of priced out of their price points or things along those lines. So I just wondering your thoughts about how maybe even some of the food situations are being increased by where the stores are placed, because we do know a lot of times those dollar stores are placed in poor neighborhoods. I imagine the same thing in the UK and in some of the other nations and continents around the world as well. But I was just wondering your thoughts about how sometimes we are almost encouraging people to go buy the bad food because that's what's at those places, very processed foods and very, while it may be cheap at those places, it is definitely very processed as well. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
well, yeah, they don't call it convenience store for nothing. I mean, that's all part of the plan. Like I said, we're living in a obesogenic society, so this is something that has been purposely orchestrated. And like you said, the more high-end food, the more whole food, healthy food is quite pricey. It's the same. It's the same here in the UK, and they're more obscure. They're not really situated in a place where those who are looking for convenience are going to necessarily go and patronize, because the convenience store has a certain food product which is cheap, it's available, and it's in abundance. And those type of foods are in your face, they may be discounted, and there's just a whole reasoning behind it all. The health food store, you don't really find plentiful. They have a selection of certain foods. Unless you really know about these foods and you've done your research, you're not necessarily going to buy them because you're not really educated on these types of foods, and it's for a specific demographic,
Right.
and the majority can't really afford, aren't necessarily, they're looking for a convenience, they're looking for a quick fix. They may, people may be working, they may be really, really busy, really faced with life situations, life in itself. So they're not really going to be thinking, the average man and woman household are not really going to be thinking that, oh, I'm going to go and get some mung beans and I'm going to sprout them, and those sprouted mug beans will be ready for me in like more like a week's time.
Right.
No, they want something where they can perhaps shove in the microwave, press the microwave, bing, it's ready. You've got a ready-made meal, and the kids are going to be satisfied. I can do that. I can then go and put my feet up, put on the TV, watch the latest soap. Do you know? Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
So
no, I definitely
it's
know what you mean and everything. The other thing that sometimes startles me, but doesn't startle me, is what we do. And I know that you're definitely more, as I recall, plant based in the ways that you go about your diet and things of that nature. But I have actually seen Super Size Me, the old
mm,
documentary, and I think
mm,
that I also saw Food Incorporated, which actually showed what we do, particularly with the big farms around the country, to these animals before we even
mm,
bother to bring them to our tables and everything
yeah,
of that nature. And I know that definitely some friends of mine watched it, and they might even become temporarily vegetarians after watching that. And I know some others that I think it totally changed their lifestyles, and they definitely became vegetarians and or vegan or some other kind of plant-based type diet and everything. Because I do know that particularly on the commercial farms, those big corporate type
mm,
farms and everything, that what they do to the animals is very inhumane. And like I said, I know
yeah,
that while we may want to think of animals and wildlife as being part of our food chain, and they are part of the food chain. If you have a meat diet and everything, I'm actually a bigger supporter of um, the smaller farms and domestic farmers. And while they may have some similar habits, I don't think that they are as bad and as evil as our corporate farmers. But I'd love to hear
yeah,
your thoughts, because I know that when I saw those movies, and it might have been another movie that I saw that was similar, it definitely uh, put concern on your mind based on the way that we lead these animals to slaughter, for lack of a better
yeah.
term.
Absolutely. I'm really glad you touched on this because this is definitely dear to my heart. And I haven't been a non-meat eater all my life. I started out as a meat eater, but many, many, many moons ago. Um, I knew I was predestined to be at least vegetarian. I never really, when I was a young girl, I never really liked eating meat. I would always eat it and chew it and then spit it out. And I got into so much trouble for doing that. And then every Saturday morning, I would go with my mum to the butcher's, and I detested. It was loud. It was so much havoc going on. You'd see the carcasses being hung, then of the chicken, their throats slit. There was blood all over the overalls of those selling the meat, and I mean, I was really young. I wanted to always wait outside, but because I was too young, my mother would say, "No, you have to come with me. I can't leave you." But those are some of the memories that I had. But as I grew up, because I also always used to hang around vegetarian, so I knew I was going to become one. But it wasn't until I went to an anti-cruelty against animals Christmas fair. I knew when I stood outside the building, I thought, right, Afriye, I know as soon as you step in and then you step out, you are going to be vegetarian. And that's what happened, because I was privy to a lot of information, videos of how animals are reared, how they're slaughtered, and what actually goes on within the meat industry. And it's horrendous. And what really brings home to me is the fact that the stress that the animal goes through before it's slaughtered, before it dies, cows as they're being milked continuously, their babies are being torn away from them. It's so inhumane, and not only that, as they rear them and somehow cultivate them and package them, you as a consumer are consuming that stress. Right. Yeah, you might be eating the chicken, but you are, because it's genetically formulated, it's genetically constructed, and you are taking on that the end of the life of that animal is in its flesh. So one of the things that really deterred me was that notion of the suffering, the pain that animal goes through, even before it goes through, the conditions that it's kept in. Right. All of that plays in and then is a factor at the end of the day when you are purchasing your produce. And the milk, when a cow is being milked for commercial reasons, and that amount, most of it even isn't even proper milk. That's even before they've chemicalized it. Mm-hmm. A lot of it is pus. And it's pus, but it's been made to look like milk. And we know pus is something that we rid ourselves of. We don't want to consume that. That's stuff that's got to be gotten rid of. But yet it's fancy, it's put in a fancy way, it's put in a fancy carton, and then it's put on the shelves for you to pick up and buy. And that's not even talking about the chemicals that's in it in itself, all the additives and preservatives that have been placed inside to make it look the way it does. Half the food that we eat, if it hadn't been processed and injected with whatever, you wouldn't even want it. You really wouldn't, because it would be putrefied and it would be it would be nasty. So the fact that they have to pretty it up does make you wonder, what am I eating? When you sit down and think about the processed foods, particularly the processed foods, it leaves me in such wonderment, Yeah, but yeah, totally. that was my journey, my snippet of my journey. And then also I ventured into, after being a vegetarian, then I became vegan. That was due to what we had, and I think it was somehow worldwide, mad cow disease.
Right, I remember that.
And that affected the cows and the dairy farm and the dairy industry. Mm-hmm. And I was a dairy eater. And I just suddenly thought, oh my gosh, mad cow disease. So I stopped eating dairy. I stopped eating the cheese. I stopped drinking the milk and eating the yogurt. But having said that, I wasn't vegan continuously. It was in stages. I went through a period, particularly when I was expecting, quote unquote, I thought I wasn't getting the right amount of protein. Mm-hmm. So I decided to go back and go back to dairy. And I did that for a while. I did that for a number of years. And then I think about maybe 13 years later, I decided, no, I need to be vegan. I need to now be plant-based. And so it has been a bit of a journey for me. It hasn't been a straight road. But that's part of your growth, that's part of the way we are. There are ups and downs, turns and twists, but you make your way, you make your headway to where it is that you want to get to. And that's where now I don't think I know I would never, ever intentionally eat meat or flesh. And the same goes for dairy. I really wouldn't go back to. I don't think I could. I remember there was a time when somebody mistakenly put, I think, some fish in my food, and I ate it and I threw it all up.
Yeah.
I threw the whole thing up. So my body would just reject it anyway. It's in
That's one
that
of the things I was
long.
getting ready to ask you about. Was I do know that some people that are, in the certain styles of living with their diets and everything will tell you that they won't eat red meat or they won't eat certain kinds of meat, but they're perfectly fine with eating fish or some of the seafoods. And
Oh.
I do know from my studies and some of my readings, and I'm not saying that I'm not guilty of doing that as well, of eating seafood and even some of the red meats, but I do know that what I've heard is that they're not treated exactly all that well either. And I do know that definitely we've heard of things going on with like the bigger animals, like the whales and uh, dolphins, I want to say, and maybe some of the other ones. But even the small fish that are caught and everything, that there are some things that I have read or heard about how they are treated as well, and how they are hunted in the Great Blue Ocean, or the lakes around our world and everything, and even some of the ponds. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about those that say that they are, pro anti red meat, but they're perfectly all right with eating fish and seafood. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about folks that have taken that path. And like I said, it's your opinion, but I just want to hear your thoughts about folks that have opted to go that path.
Yeah, I mean, being pescatarian, yeah, I'm not a meat basher or like a food Nazi, dare I say it. I just speak about my experience at
Right.
the end of the day. What has helped me, what has seen me through my journey. In terms of the fishery, they're not plain sailingly safe as well, because there's a lot of mercury now in our estuaries and our water estuaries and water environment, sadly enough, because they are polluting the seas. So it begs the question, like, I might, are you eating the fresh fish or seafood? Because this is what's going on now. Food has become so synthetic
Mm-hmm.
that we have to really be discerning as to what we're putting inside our bodies. And like I said, we eat far too much as a globe. We really do, to the point we eat so much, but yet there's so much waste. It's quite a dichotomy. It's quite, when we talk about the food industry, there's so many aspects to it. If you really, delve in and research, you just think to yourself, oh my goodness, what the hell is going on? But like I said, I'm not someone who says, oh no, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that, and this is bad and that is bad. No, that's not because I've come from that direction. I've come, and everybody's different. I know with myself, and especially my spiritual growth, the fact that I don't eat certain foods definitely has impacted my spirituality, which is really intrinsic to my own health and well-being. I really do place so much emphasis on my spiritual lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And I know when I eat certain foods, it doesn't even have to be meat, that I become a certain way. And that, for example, I become very agitated with certain foods. I become more dense. I have less energy. And I know food plays such an important part in what we do and how we feel. And for me, it's all about reestablishing that relationship with our food. It's not about going on a diet. It's not about having that or immersing yourself in that fad, the latest diet fad. It's not about being in the gym for hours on end. It's really about reestablishing our relationship with our food. I myself, when I was young, I had 2 eating disorders.
Wow.
I was a dancer, and as a dancer, you really want to look after your weight, your body. You want to be live. You want to be skinny. I wanted to be skinny. My genetics, on the other hand, was like, no, you can't be skinny. You've inherited your structure from your mother and her mother, and my ethnicity allows me to be the way I am. But I didn't see it that way. I wanted to be like certain of my Caucasian dance compadres, I wanted to be like them, but we were different genetically. So I put myself on an unhealthy diet, and that was really starving myself as a young girl. And I was really angst about my eating. I was eating 1 minute, binging the next, throwing up the next. And it was awful, especially as a young girl. And then I developed bulimia. I first of all developed anorexia nervosa, and then I developed bulimia. So it was really, really a terrible time for me. And as well as that, I had chronic acne. I had terrible, terrible skin. And this carried on till adult, until I was an adult. So it went from puberty to adult acne. And it was horrendous. And it wasn't until I really, really dug deep and soul searched and said to myself, asked myself, what is going on? I had to ask these questions internally, because the medics couldn't help me. They put me on different, prescribed me different medication, and it just made the whole situation worse. So I knew it was definitely down to me, that I had to take responsibility for my own health. And that's what I did. And in the end, I cured myself of my eating disorders and my acne.
Oh, wow.
And what I had to do was really reestablish my relationship with my eating. I had to really dig deep. And the whole process led me to abstaining from certain foods. I had to go through a process of elimination, where I eliminated a lot of certain foods, culprit foods. And I was just down to eating very simple grains, no white rice, no white bread, no bread at all, no bread, no wheat. And I was eating copious amounts of fruits and vegetables, and my eating became very, very simplistic. And then I noticed that my skin condition really improved. My eating really changed. And then I decided, okay, everything's coming in, is coming into balance. I'll reintroduce the foods back. And as I did that, I realized that I had an intolerance to certain foods to this day. And I can't eat gluten. And I know that is a factor for many people, that gluten is a problem in their eating, because it's something that has been, it's a component that has it's always been there, but it's just been made worse now because of the food cultivations. For instance, oats. I love oats. I have to now eat gluten-free. But do you know that oats does not contain gluten? It's only because it gets cross-contaminated with wheat. That's why now it contains gluten. So that really annoyed me, and that's because of the food production, that it kind of crossbreeds with wheat now. When we see wheat now and when we view wheat maybe 50 years ago, it's not the same. Why? Because wheat now, when you look at it, it's like 6 feet tall. It's so huge because it's GMO'd. our old wheat that we used to eat wasn't that way, so it was a lot smaller. And there's so many variances with our food, and the way it's been tampered with, and the way it's been the way now it's been constructed. It needs to be deconstructed, because those are the things, those are the components that irritate us. Irritable bowel syndrome.
Right.
It has fluctuated now. A lot of people are suffering with that, and they're being given medication. I mean, they say there's no cure, and they say it's an autoimmune syndrome,
Right.
or some kind of syndrome, which really it stems back to diet. It's what is going on in the body and what you are putting in your body.
And speaking
And
of
gluten is a main factor. Even nuts. Now, common nuts. We eat nuts. A lot of people eat nuts, but a lot of people have allergies to nuts.
Yep.
You know, because they're not the real deal. They are the
like
agricultural practices, and the way they spray the vegetation. We consume that, and a lot of people are suffering with these allergies and intolerances.
No doubt about that. One of the things I was going to just bring up really quickly, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about this as well, is, and we've heard a lot of it talked about with the athletes when the Olympics were going on, Simone Biles, and before that, Naomi Osaka, and definitely Michael Phelps came out. And actually, I had the pleasure of interviewing a former Olympian from Canada, and she was actually in the 80s. I believe it was the 88 Olympics. I don't think it was 84, but she was a synchronized swimmer and everything. And she even admitted what you just said, that she had a eating disorder. But, you know, at that time, they weren't really talking about therapy and mental health in our community. But I was just wondering your thoughts about the importance of food and food development, even to our mental health. Because like I said, I know that Michelle Cameron Coulter, who was the synchronized swimmer, was on a couple of shows that I've been part of, but she definitely mentions the fact that she didn't find out about her eating disorder until I think after the Olympics, because there wasn't a lot of conversations around that. And I do have friends in the dance world as well, so I know that that's probably a conversation that even exists in that world. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about food and its relevance to our mental health, because definitely I think that they are interconnected, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that interconnection.
Yes, most definitely. You know, when we think about food is our mood. When you eat certain foods, you behave in a certain way. I'm sure if research was done on those who commit crimes, I'm sure they hadn't eaten a sprouted burger, or, you know, a sprouted vegan burger before they committed whatever it is that they committed. You know, food really impacts on us. And certain, particularly like sugar, it gives you that spike. It creates that kind of false high that we have. And that's why we want more of it. It is a drug in itself. And just eating certain foods that have so many food additives, the colors that are not natural, you know, these are the things that we are deeming normal, and they're not normal. Excuse me. But yet, you know, children, for instance, when children eat a lot of like these confectionery foods, you know that a child will become hyper. Autism is on the increase. You know, we don't know really what the mother's diet was. You know, the diet impacts on us in every way, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. Just sweets, sugar, junk food. If you were to go to total and not eat anything, and then really examine the way you feel, the way you are, if you fasted, I mean, I know it's quite difficult to do that, but if you did stop certain foods and really investigate, I mean, when I was trying to find out what was wrong with me, when I was suffering from my eating disorders and my chronic acne, I had to journal.
Hmm.
I had to journal everything that I was eating. And one of the things that I really pinpointed was in the rising when I woke up, I would write how I was feeling. And if I felt a certain way, I would really investigate why I was feeling that. And I would look and turn through the pages and see and really examine what I had ate the day before. And it did, it created a pattern I could see, and I was able to see that certain foods affected me and it affected my moods. Just um, like eating bread, for instance. I mean, I don't really want to start saying this food, that food, because that was me individually. But eating bread, I know when I eat a lot of bread, I try not to because I'm intolerant to it anyway. But it is it's one of those foods that are quite addictive. My mood, I become very, very depressed when I eat a lot of bread. Also, physically, I get lines in my face. I get wrinkles. So, and that could be for different reasons. It could be for the yeast. I don't know, but I know I have a certain aversion to eating bread, and that's just a typical example.
Mm.
Um, when you eat certain foods, they do give off chemical reactions.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
just no, it's not rocket science.
Mhm.
Certain foods will definitely make somebody react in a certain way. It's just a given fact. And like I mentioned before, food is your mood. You are what you eat. So you have to
Right.
be really careful about what you're putting into yourself. And like you say, that Olympian who suffered with an eating disorder, and there wasn't much research, and there
Mm-mm.
still isn't. There's not a lot of research into eating disorders. Who knows why?
Yeah.
Because that is one of the ways that we are very much tempted in terms of what we eat and how we conduct our lives. It is through food, and food is a major industry, a major commercial industry. So that's probably one of the reasons why there's not a lot of research into eating disorders. I remember when my son, I, I thought it was hereditary, that wheat intolerance. So I took my son to see a medic, and I suggested this to him, and he thought I was absolutely off my, ludicrous.
Right.
He really wasn't having it. He was like, "Oh no, that's not the reason." He wasn't even prepared to even listen to me, so I couldn't even voice my concerns that my son was suffering from a food intolerance, because they just don't want to know. I mean, doctors, they're in their training of how many years? How much training do they get on nutrition? They don't get very much at all.
No, no.
They really don't. It's not a feature. So, of course, if you want to go to your doctor and talk about eating disorders and food intolerances, don't be surprised if you get fobbed off, because it's just not a major component in terms of diagnosis or prognosis. There just really isn't that much information. Maybe now there's a little more than what there was when I took my son to the medics. But still, I still most definitely believe we have to take charge of our own health. It's the only way, and we can. We don't need to put power into somebody else. The power is within you, and you
No,
can do that. You can do
no,
that
definitely.
yourself.
Yeah, we can definitely do that ourselves and everything. One of the things I was curious about, and you actually alluded to it a couple of times. Well, two things crossed my mind. One is you talked about your spiritual growth, and I would love to hear you share maybe a little bit more with our audience about how the food journey helped in your spiritual growth. Because I definitely consider myself to be, and it's just my thoughts. It doesn't have to do with anybody else's and everything. But I consider myself to be more spiritual than religious. I sometimes feel that our churches get a little bit too caught up in the institutions and the personalities and things of that nature. So, and I also sometimes think that they have a my way or the highway kind of attitude, whereas mine is a little bit more. inclusive, meaning that I believe that there is more than one way to make it to heaven's gates and all of that. Not in a rush to get there to find out, but that's just my thoughts and everything. But I would love to hear your thoughts about the food journey and how the food journey has played in your own spiritual growth. Because, like I said, I have a copy somewhere around here of the Bible, and I may pick that up. But I've also probably got some works. I know I've got a tapestry that is of a Buddhist background, if I'm remembering correctly. That's what its history is, and definitely I probably have some other books that have other philosophies in the house as well. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about the spiritual growth and how the spiritual growth has played in with your health journey.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, it's been intrinsic. My spiritual growth has really impacted on my health growth, and now the two have become practically one. My spiritual background goes back again to when I was a young girl. I was brought up in Catholic faith, real strong Catholic faith. Went to a Catholic primary school, a kindergarten school, and I always had questions. I had questions about the validity of Catholicism. I always wondered, Jesus died on the cross. And I'm not knocking Catholicism or Christianity, but this has just been my journey. I've often wondered, like, Jesus had died to save our sins, but humanity was still the same, still sinning. I couldn't really understand. And then, Christianity is very much in the forefront of everything. We are supposed to be, humane and good to one another, loving to one another. But yet there's so many certain atrocities, slavery being one, that was very much, if not part of the Christianity and the Christian faith. And just little things that I always used to ponder. We would study the Bible and we would only study Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And I wondered, why don't we start from the very beginning? Why can we not do Genesis? I would voice these questions, but I would just internally voice them. I wouldn't, because I was too timid to actually ask these questions, because I knew they were a little bit, I wouldn't say rebellious, but they were a little bit opposing. And when I was young, it was you didn't oppose in any shape or form. But yeah, that was like the start of it. And then I grew, and then I was still asking certain questions as you do. What's the meaning of life? And spirituality, religion. I like the fact that there's various religions, because we say that God, I use the name Yahweh. Yahweh is unlimited, but why do we limit Yahweh, God, to one faith? Why is one faith monopolizing God when God is unlimited? So just things like that. And then I got into Hare Krishna. And Hare Krishna is an ancient Indian faith, Hinduism. But that one thing with them, they advocate vegetarianism. So I think that was one of the ways that prolonged my vegetarianism, was being with them and being devoted with them. I had a spell of, within the Hindu faith, wearing a sari, and I loved it. I really loved it. It was very unusual, because for a Black woman to be in that faction, to be wearing a sari, to be doing the Haranams, where you go out into town and you have the drummers. I'm sure you may have it where you live. You have the drummers and they're drumming and there's dancing and they're going around singing Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And I was part of that. And I look upon that as with fond memories, but it is quite funny that I did that. But that was my quest, on my spiritual quest. And just various things that I've found myself going on retreats and meditating and going within myself, and asking myself questions and being self-reliant, knowing that I have the answer to whatever question that I have. I don't have to look external. And that's what I love about my spiritual journey. It's not about looking at an external stimuli. It's about the internal stimuli, and it's all within you, and it just gives you, it empowers you, and it doesn't take away your sovereignty. It empowers it. And that's been part of my journey. And I'm, you know, we are living in these times where we have been secluded, we've been isolated, we've been fragmented, and it has been quite tremendous for certain people. People have suffered, maybe they've experienced some bereavement in their lives because of this, and I really feel for them. But for me, it's been one of the most powerful times in my whole life. I never thought sitting, because I am in most of the times in my bedroom, even to now, at this moment, I'm in my bedroom. And I never thought that me being here, sitting sometimes in my pajamas by myself, that it would be the most pleasurable time of my life, because I've grown so much spiritually. And it hasn't been all plain sailing. There have been ups and downs, and I have come crashing down, but I've gotten up as well. And one of the things that have really helped me is meditation, just sitting quiet, because it gives me that time to be still, that time to come away from all the digital stuff, to turn off my phone, all the devices, and just look to me internally, and get those downloads, those necessary downloads, those information that I can utilize and put them to good use, maybe to being creative, coming up with ideas for my business, or not even that, just being still and not having so many thoughts. And meditation has been so key for me. I don't know where I would be without it. And just also when I've gotten the chance, going out into Mother Nature, going out. I mean, I live in urban London, you know, busy city, but you can always find parks and green areas, green spaces. And I even have a garden as well, which I underutilize, I must say. But I go out at times and I'll go and sit by a tree, and just being by the tree is really healing. It's so calming, it's tranquil, and you just sit there and just be still and breathing in, taking in fresh air, breathing in prana. Sometimes I'll go and take a book, but I try not to do anything. I try not to be busy. So just doing things like that, that's been part of my spiritual journey. And in terms of my health journey, it's been fundamental, because at times I'll go out and do yoga, and I will connect with the breath, and I will connect with myself, but I'm moving. It's like a moving or movement meditation. Even eating and creating your food with love, that's spiritual. You know, praying over your food, that's spiritual. Showing gratitude, that's spiritual. And one of the things that I really do, and I really would suggest, if you don't do it, try to do it, is to be, when you wake up, the first thing to show the gratitude for waking up, because there are certain people who go to sleep and they don't wake up. They don't wake up in the morning. So just being able to open your eyes and take breath and know that you've slept and you've woken up, that in itself is so spiritual. And just having that gratitude, rather than just springing out of bed and thinking, oh, what have I got to do? Oh, I've got to go on my phone. Just take a few moments, a minute, a couple of seconds, to just give that gratitude to whoever. You know, if you do believe in God, if you don't, but just give gratitude to the fact that you have woken up, I think is the done deed. And that is one of my biggest tips, the fact that I'm able to wake up and get on with my day. I have to give major thanks for that.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah. No doubt about that. I was actually
yeah.
just thinking about reflecting on some of what you were saying because actually, I went to a Jesuit university. Like I said, my mom was definitely raised Baptist and all of that, and definitely my grandparents were very much involved in Pine Chapel, the Baptist church that is a family church, for lack of a better term. Dad, while his mother, my grandmother, may have gone to an Episcopal church. I believe she may have attended, but she was not overly religious. And my dad is definitely not overly religious, even though he's attended a universal church here in this area and everything from what I recall and remember. But definitely, I have remembered some of the thoughts of the Jesuit education. And like I said, I'm glad to have that education because one of the things that they taught you in that kind of environment was it was a liberal arts school, and the Jesuits are very much about liberal arts, so it definitely taught you a lot of critical thinking. So even though my major may have been in journalism and a minor in poli sci, I prided them on it, teaching me a lot. And of course, I got a minor in religion because pretty much everybody had to get a minor in religion and philosophy because it was a Jesuit university, and it was, I think, either 12 and 9 hours that you were required. I think it was 12 hours of philosophy and 9 hours of theology, or it might have been the opposite. It might have been 12 hours of theology and 9 hours of philosophy. But either way, it's 21 hours of
Mm.
philosophical religious thought. So you might as well call that a second minor and everything that you were required to have in that environment. And when it comes to the Hare Krishnas, I know that I still do some work at a station in Carborough, which is next to Chapel Hill, where UNC is. And before the pandemic, they would regularly be out there serving meals. So, like I said, I
Mm.
remember that was the group that I recall that they would be out there, definitely passing out some of their literature, but also serving meals. And they were mostly all, as I recall, vegetarian meals, but
Mm.
it's part of what they're giving back to the community. So they were actually there and would serve it to the students that might want to grab something. And I would be catching the mass transit bus back from Chapel Hill because Carborough to Chapel Hill is right next to each other. So I would catch it from Chapel Hill back to Durham, and do remember grabbing at least a few plates from those fine folks and everything. And it was definitely very enjoyable and all of that. So I was thinking about that as you were reflecting on your own journey and everything. One of the things that I was curious about, and it actually comes to another substance that can be dangerous to our society, but there are also cultural things that go on in our community. And, definitely in the African American community, we do like our fried foods, which we know are not always good for us. And we are also very guilty of, we talked about sugar, but we're also very guilty of salt foods and salt intake. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of that as well, because I know I am definitely guilty of grabbing a watermelon or a cantaloupe and not just wanting the natural fruit taste, but want to add the salt flavor as well. So I'll put salt on that, and the same with my celery. As a matter of fact, I did that earlier today, and I know that that adds to hypertension. And as far as I know, the last time I went to the
Yeah.
doctor, I didn't have any cases of that. But I also know that I might be playing Russian roulette when I'm doing these salt dishes and all of that. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about how we as a society, particularly those in the minority community, do become a little bit heavy on our salt intake.
Yeah, salt is another one. It's right up there with particularly white salt, again with white sugar. I think in our society, in the UK, it's 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 suffers with high blood pressure, hypertension. So, and those numbers aren't going down. As well as sugar, salt is in everything. Salt is also in our sweet things. So it just begs the question as to why. Why do, I mean, they say it brings out the flavor, but the flavor, if it's in its real natural potent state, you wouldn't need salt. You really wouldn't need salt. So that's another addiction in itself, addicted substance in itself. And yeah, the African American community really knows how to use a lot of salt. Again, it's about really asking yourself the question, because salt can lead to these conditions. High intake of salt can lead to these conditions, and a lot of us are suffering with high blood pressure. And at the end of the day, what happens when you do suffer this, they put you on pharmaceuticals, and they say that those pharmaceuticals, you take them for the rest of your life. Who wants to be taking medication for the rest of their lives? That you become so dependent on a couple of pills that if you don't take them, your your life may be cut short. I mean, that's horrendous for me. Hearing something like that I have to be dependent on that, on something like that, just makes me think to myself, I don't want to be there. And I spoke to somebody. I mean, I'm in my I don't want to give my age away, but I'm a mature woman, and most of my peers are on these high blood pressure tablets. And I spoke to one, and they asked me, they were really quite flabbergasted because I said, no, I'm not on high blood pressure tablets. And they were like, really? They couldn't believe it, because most of people my age are on some kind of medication. And I'm adverse to it. I don't want to take medication because I don't want to have to rely on these substances to keep me alive. So what do I do to prevent that? I watch what I eat. I watch what my intake. I watch my sugar intake. I watch my salt intake. It's as simple as that. It's not rocket science. It's really what you have to do. What you put into your body it will speak 1,000 words, it will tell you the signs. And our bodies are a physical intelligence. They have a physical intelligence. Your body will tell you what it needs, what it's lacking, if you're really, really ready to listen. And that's where my spirituality comes into play, because when I am quiet, I can listen to my body. I can listen to what I need to listen and to what it's telling me. So it's all synonymous. It's all very much part and parcel of one and the other. But nowadays we are nullified to all of that, unfortunately, because we are too distracted. We are too heavily engrossed in things that we don't need to be. I'm not knocking. I'm trying not to knock these things, because they're very much part of our lives. But to the point where, we are obsessed with being on social media. If we're not on it, our lives crumbles, some of us. And it shouldn't be like that. It
Well, that's
shouldn't. I
actually
mean,
where I'm glad you brought that up, because that's actually one of the questions I was going to go with you at, and everything along those lines is, I know for a fact, I've actually brought up on a couple of these shows that I've done, that our kids are definitely very much engaged in social justice causes, and I find that to be wonderful. And I actually think that they are probably one of the most active and social justice groups that are out there, probably not since my parents' generation, meaning those that were doing adult 20s and everything in the 60s, in the 1960s. That this is a generation that I would compare them to, and in some ways I would even think that they are better in terms of their ability to go past divides, whether that's racial divides, whether that's orientation divides, whether that's class divides, or even religious divides. But on the flip side of that, I do know that there are a lot of times they get caught up in the like culture, wanting to be liked on social media, wanting to be approved by social media, and the things of that nature. So as a parent, and I heard you mention a son, and I don't know if there's more than one, but as a parent, I was wondering your thoughts about the need to be approved in social media, and maybe if you have any thoughts about them being the activist element. But then, as we're talking about food and the food element, I'd also love to hear your thoughts about that, because I do know that a lot of times we diagnose our kids with things like hyperactivity, and we put them on things like Ritalin and things of that nature. It is my opinion, and I have no kids, but I do have two nephews that, as far as I know, are not on that kind of medication. But a lot of times when I see my friends with kids, or even friends that might have grandkids, I'm sitting there going like, you've got this kid on this or that, but they just look like a typical hyperactive youth to me. And I think a youth in general are hyperactive, but then you add the sugar component, which a lot of our foods have sugar, particularly our cereals and our foods that we give the kids. So I wonder how much of that is played into the foods that they eat as well. Because I know definitely as a youth, I had my fair share of, cornflakes and Fruit Loops and some of the other cereals that are out there. And we know that those are very sugar laced, and
Yeah.
definitely I can think of some other things that are out there like those uh, box drinks and everything that are very much sugar laced. So I just love to hear your thoughts about the youth of today and maybe even how food is impacting them.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that social media thing, FOMO, the fear of missing out. Even I'm trying not to. I actually, before talking to you, I was on a device detox where I haven't really been using my phone. All my groups, I've stopped them. I rarely, minimally, I hardly well, I really don't go on them at all, only just for emergency sake and some things that I need to just browse on. Well, not browse, but just do some research. But other than that, I'm really not on my mobile phone at all. But in terms of children and the food and the hyperactivity, I must admit, I was one of those hyperactive children because back in the day, back in the 70s, is when I grew up as a young child, we were on all those Cocoa Pops. I remember I didn't even like water. I detested water. I was reared on Coca-Cola and Pepsi because I just couldn't drink water at the time. And also those concentrated juices, tartazan. I think that's really what caused a lot of my hyperactivity. I don't know if it still is an ingredient in some of these juices, but I'm sure they have something equivalent anyway. But yeah, it's a sad tale because the children are our next generation. They're the ones that we're going to pass the baton on to hopefully do wonders and invent and save the planet, as it were. But if children aren't getting the right kinds of start in terms of nutritional value in their foods, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, really and truly, as a parent, we need to be making these changes, if not for ourselves, for our children, for our children's sake, and setting the example. I have two sons, and they had a little spell in Africa where they were living in Africa at the time. And I don't know what happened. I think they watched a program regarding how animals are treated in the abattoirs, and it made them become vegetarians. It just instantaneously made them. I was quite shocked when I spoke to, because I wasn't with them at the time. I was here in the UK, and they were like, "Mom, we're vegetarians now." And I thought, wow, I was really quite happy. So they were out there in Africa being vegetarians. And then they came back to the UK, and they came back to primary in kindergarten, and they were vegetarians for a while. But it's when they went to, we call it secondary, I think you call it high school. Right. They went to high school, and they decided, no, we're not going to be vegetarians anymore. Why? Because all their friends, their peers were eating lots of all the meat, and the school dinners were meat-based. Mm-hmm. And they came and told me that we're not vegetarians anymore. And I thought, oh, no, because they got so much pressure, and they wanted to assimilate themselves, which is fine because they had been in Africa. They had that kind of African upbringing, and now they were coming back into the Eurocentric upbringing. And they just decided, no, we're not going to be vegetarians anymore. So what I'm trying to get at is there is a whole kind of school educational scene where, the food that our children are subjected to is really needs to be looked upon and really investigated, because some of our children aren't getting the best kinds of foods. They're not getting the best kind of nutrients. Again, it's a little bit fast foods, These sort of foods that are packaged very well, they look nice, but really there's no nutritional value, but yet they're just easy to just distribute. My children, yeah, they have the school meals, but I try to balance that out with them eating more healthy at home, more cooked foods, more salads, so that when they do go to school and they are faced with the less nutritional foods, at least when they come back home, that they can have better eating, better foods available to them. But yeah, it is a fundamental problem. Hyperactivity amongst children, obesity, and a lot of these health conditions that we once thought were just adults suffered from, now our children are suffering from them. And diabetes,
Hmm.
children are suffering from this as well. Obesity, lots of, I mean, it begs the question as to what are we doing as a society for our children. Our children, we don't want them to go down that unhealthy road, that unhealthy path. So we have to really make the changes now. Now is the time to do that. And now is the time to really ask yourself, what am I doing in my own household? What are the things that I can do to bring about this change? And it doesn't, like I said before, have to be something that's so so out of the ordinary, so out of the ordinary of your own lifestyle. Just making small changes can be so much beneficial to you and your family and your friends as well, friends and family, colleagues. It doesn't have to stop just within your own household.
No, there's no doubt about that and everything. We still got about another 15, 20 minutes to go. And I did have a couple of other questions that I was going to get to, including definitely the services that you offer and everything. But one of the things I
Yeah.
was going to ask before we got to that, and of course, there's a question that I asked just about all the guests toward the end of the shows and everything. But the thing that I was curious about is what are some of the things that you have learned in the last year or two that you have been surprised by, even maybe some of the life lessons that you've learned recently as you've been going on your journey, particularly during this pandemic time. So, what is some of those life lessons that maybe have even surprised you? I know you've alluded to a couple of things, but I'd love to hear you
Mm.
maybe elaborate on others as well.
What have I really being self-sufficient, not
Mm,
having to have a lot of people around me. Before, I relied on others, friends, colleagues, but just being within my own vicinity, my own home, my own household, just finding ways and means to occupy myself, and not just necessarily being online, but just reading, meditating, creating certain dishes. Now I'm kind of venturing into raw foods or raw preps. That's what I like to call them. That transitional phase where you're veering from cooked to more raw, less heated foods. So that's what I've been doing, discovering just how easy and how accessible it is. But yeah, I think the major thing for me is just being good with myself, being really satisfied with me. I am enough. I know we've heard that saying a lot, but really it's true. It's the honest truth. Just being here, getting up to little things on my own. And I am a real so solar social person.
right.
I just love my own company. But that's not to say that I've just been so isolated. I've met a lot of beautiful souls virtually, which has been a real surprise to me. The amount of people, and that is the beauty of technology. you know like here I'm talking to you. I would never
Mhm.
have had this opportunity had it not been for technology, and it just goes on and on. I've met people in Australia, people mounds, lots and lots of people from the States, Bali, it's endless. So that has been the real big thing for me, is the amount of contact that I've made, the encounters that I've come across, just learning from other people and other people's stories. So yeah, technology gets the thumbs up. But yeah, really, I think with me, just self-love, really beginning to understand who I am. And it's made, and I've heard this before, it's made myself and a lot of people self-reflective. It's given us that opportunity to ask and be with ourselves and understand who we are and where we're going, rather than dealing with the hustle and bustle of commuting and going to work and being in that workspace. I know things are changing now where I won't say going back to normal, because it will never be normal, but going back into the external environments, whatever they may be, work, social, leisure, whatever, it's all starting to open up now. But I really love this kind of world for myself, being my own vicinity world, and the virtual world as well. And just loving meeting people and loving what I can discover, and loving about my spiritual journey as well, connecting with the higher beings, which I call God, Yahweh. Some may call God, Jah, whatever. It's all the same as far as I'm concerned. And just being cool with myself, really loving it's about having that relationship with your food, but having that relationship with yourself. They go in sync. They really do go in sync. And I think this time has really alluded to that. Has really alluded to the fact that we can really be comfortable with ourselves. We can really be self-reliant, which is so much what I do advocate. Really tapping into that inward world, that inner world, and seeing what's there. And that's really what I have discovered about myself during these times. It's just myself, who I am, what I'm about, and that inner world within me, which is yet to be explored. And I'm really excited about that.
And I think more people are definitely reflecting on their life, and definitely I see more people paying attention to the environment around them. I heard you alluding to that, even with like the meditation. I've actually got a acquaintance, a friend of mine that actually has grown now their second garden, because they have everything from tomatoes to
Oh,
sunflower seeds
really?
that sprouted. I think the last one, it went up to the I'm in an apartment complex, so it actually went to the second floor and everything. So it grew up
Wow.
that tall and everything. I don't know that this one has grown that tall, but it still is pretty high. And definitely they've got I want to say cucumbers and some other plants, even some basils
Yeah.
and things of that nature. And they actually are originally from Brazil, so they do use some of that food to create part of their diet that they
Mm.
incorporate with whatever other things they've got. And I've got another friend that has a garden and has done some canning and things of that nature. So I think people are getting more in tune with some of their back to nature
Yeah.
connections, and that's wonderful to see people getting more into that back to nature kind of environment. It's just good to see people get into that kind of feeling and that kind of enjoyment out there. So definitely I've been seeing that, and like I said, seeing people pay attention to nature. And I've even seen people re-examine or even kind of examine our place in the universe, because I know some people are even trying to figure out and I think that it's almost impossible for the thought of whether we're the only ones here, meaning that the life forces that exist here in the world and everything, if there are other life forces. And I know I've got some
Oh,
friends that are definitely of the opinion that there's got to be other life forces. We might not have found them, but they've got to be somewhere out there in the universe. And they may even be laughing at some of our food conversations, because they may be looking at it like, I don't get why these people are like torturing themselves when we got out of that mindset decades, if not centuries, if not millenniums ago. So they may be looking at us that way. But that's what I know some of my friends that are into that kind of thought would probably make that argument. But for those that are listening, if you want to comment on that, you can. But for those that are listening, what services do you offer, and how can folks find you? I was definitely strolling the about page across the
Yeah.
page for the last few minutes so they can click on that to learn more about what you do. But if you want to share what some of those services are that you offer, I know when I looked, I saw the yoga. I definitely saw some smoothies that you were giving people recipes about. But I'm sure that folks would love to learn about those. And if you also want to share any of your social media that folks can find you at as well, whether that's Instagram, Clubhouse, Facebook, or any of those other sites, I'm sure that our listeners would love to hear that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, for that. Yeah, it's funny that you touched on regarding life, other life beings. Yeah, nothing is impossible. I think really and truly, we as a species are quite, I think some of us are quite arrogant to believe that we are the only ones, but that's just my opinion. But yeah, all right. Going back to where I can be found. Yeah, thank you for having the banner of my website, afrolifewealth.com. Some of the services I offer: holistic nutrition. I believe that there is, well, I help individuals, clients realize the self-health champion within. So it's about, again, as my message has been throughout, is that you have the ways and the means to help yourself. You know this already. I'm just a guide of facilitating, helping you remember and teasing this out of you. So we work together. I don't really instruct. I don't believe in it as such. I only facilitate, and I offer certain suggestions, but it's really down to the individual to come up with something where we both feel that, yes, this is really realistic, and yes, this is achievable. So that's one of the things that I do. Like you mentioned as well, yoga is something that's so important to me. Movement is definitely very, very paramount in terms of your health, getting the body moving, getting the circulation going. So I do that through yoga, dance, and very, very mild martial arts as well. Just those simple kinds of natural ways of moving where you don't need equipment as such. And then energy work, which will extend to meditation. Meditation is a major feature in what I do. Guided meditation. I really feel that you can't really teach someone how to meditate as such. You may get somebody who's, vocalizing meditation, but everybody really knows and has the skill to meditate. It's really about being comfortable and being consistent, because a lot of people think, oh, I'm sitting here and I'm still thinking about the shopping and I'm thinking about this and I'm thinking about that. That's all part of the process. We think so many thoughts, so many thousands, millions of thoughts per whatever. You're not going to get rid of them. So it's very much part of the meditative process, but it's about not wallowing, not engaging in the thoughts when you're meditating. So those are sorts of things that I go through in with the meditation guidance. I do crystal energy, chakra therapy, aromatherapy, other kinds of energy work. I also do readings, tarot readings, to help people make certain decisions in their lives. I'm not like a gypsy with there's nothing wrong with being a gypsy, but I just do it very loosely. I pick out some cards and then I will just say what comes to me, being very intuitive. I will speak what I feel, and that's what I do with the readings. So I hold one-to-ones, I hold group meetings virtually, particularly presentations. I'm on YouTube. I have a little YouTube channel. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn as Afrolife Wealth. So if you sort of searched on Afrolife Wealth, you'll find me somewhere, I'm sure. So I do a lot of things online so that I'm accessible to whoever wants to connect with me. And I have an ebook as well, which I've painstakingly written. It's an interactive ebook which has lots of dishes. You get to see me demonstrating how to create these dishes. It's a little bit educational as well. It's a fun little book. So that's on my website. And I'm hoping to, well, I'm not hoping, I am going to be doing some courses as well, virtual courses on how to make certain food prep dishes. So that transitional aspect from cooked to raw, because I believe that our food should really, as much as possible, be as natural as it possibly can, because that's where all the nutrients is. When you cook foods, you cook out all the nutrients. But that's another area. So yeah, having your food as natural as possible is the best as you can have in terms of feeding your body with the vitamins and minerals that it needs. So I will be demonstrating on plant-based raw foods as well. Yeah, and if anyone wants to DM me any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions, or just DM me about their health journey or anything really. That's where I am. My email is, well, I don't know if you can link that as well, but it's admin@afrilifewealth.com. That's admin, ADM, what's it? ADMIN, I almost forgot then, at afrilifewealth.com.
Yeah, we can definitely add that really quickly and everything. But one of the things I was going to say is that I'm sure that folks will definitely be glad to know that you're into the crystals, because I have some friends of mine. I don't have any currently at the moment, but I have friends of mine that are very much into that crystal space, and they use that crystal to give them positive energy and to get them through their days and everything along those lines. So I know my friend Zach, even when he's doing his show, Funk from the Front Seat, he will sometimes pull out the crystals because he's got the crystals on his front dashboard and all of that. And of course, he's got some in his house as well. So I probably need
I'm actually holding a crystal as we speak. I'm holding rose quartz, to give me that little edge while I'm speaking and communicating as well. And it's a very loving crystal. It's one of my favorite.
And like I said, I'm sure that those folks would love to hear that you've got that crystal, and it's a very important crystal to you and everything. As I was saying, Gary, to wrap up, I think I got just a few more minutes, but one of the things that I do at the end is know that you do have another digital home here. That's kind of my new catchphrase for the different things we do here on International Broadcast Media. So anytime that you've got anything going on and you want to share that, you do have another home here that you can come to and all of that. And then the other thing I was going to say is that, there is a global network. We have shows coming out of South Africa, Nigeria. We have audience members and participants coming out of places like Australia, New Zealand, definitely England, Switzerland, of course, throughout the United States, and a number of other places around the globe as well. So that being said, we always love to have our guests give their words of encouragement, their words of positivity that they would like to leave with our global audience. And then after you give that, I'll probably bring on the intro, outro little robot that they gave me and everything. But yeah, any words of encouragement that you would like to share with our audience. And like I said, I would love to have you come back either on this show or one of my other shows and definitely continue our conversation, because it's been very enlightening. I think you've definitely given a lot of insight that people needed to hear. And like I'm saying, anytime that you want to come back on, all you got to do is holler, and we'll definitely get you on either this one, the radio show, or we'll get you on Mullins Music and Memories, or maybe even one of the shows that I co-host, such as The Gamer's Den, which is talking about video games and its impact on society and how we can actually learn positive life lessons from video games. And also I do the Online Dinner Party, which is another one of my shows. And then Barbara H. Smith is one that I produce. So all of those shows, I'm pretty much sure that we can get you on them, or definitely anything that I am engaged in, you are more than welcome to appear back on, because I've definitely enjoyed your energy and your spirit and your conversation. So any words of positivity that you would like to share as we head out the door on this particular conversation?
Well, wow. Well, to begin with, I just want to say how honored I was to be on your show and for you to invite me to have this dialogue, this conversation. It's been so brilliant. I loved it. I didn't think I was going to talk so much, but I have managed to. But yeah, it's been absolutely wonderful, and I hope, excuse me, your audience get a little bit of something, a little bit of knowledge that they may not have wondered or known about, or just made them think just a little bit differently. So I would love to know if that was the case. But yeah, I'm really really happy to have been on the show. Positive words of, of wisdom.
Yeah.
Um, I would just say, really, that you are enough. Whoever you are, whatever it is that you're going through, we all go through certain, I would say, seasons, and nothing lasts forever. And I would just like to say, think about self-satisfaction, self-reliance, and self, and know that you are enough. You are enough for yourself, and as you are enough for yourself, you're enough for everybody else, really. And that's where it starts with. It starts with you, the individual, and know that you can accomplish anything that you want to, anything, really and truly. Particularly if you start off with the visualization, the thought. Start off with the thought, and then you start off with the thoughts, and then the thoughts become words, and then the words become actions. That is how it works. That is the laws of the universe. You have to put things into action. They're not going to happen if you just visualize and you speak about it. You have to do it as well. So my words of wisdom are that you are enough. Self, self, self. And also, health is your real wealth, because you help yourself with your health. I think I'll leave it at that. I'm going to get confused now.
No, that sounded great. I appreciate those words of wisdom. And I'm going to put on our intro, outro, and everything, and that will get us to exactly almost 2 hours. So definitely add in my few minutes and everything. So I think I spoke to you for about an hour and 50 minutes. So I know you weren't expecting to talk that long, but it was a great conversation, and I would love to have you come back on in the near future. But right now, we're going to get this robot on out of here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.